is who has pretty much no experience or maybe answered a CQ a couple times? Okay, about a third. Active hunters? Active activators? Okay, so about a little bit of everything. So I'll kind of, my intent is to just kind of cover the basics of all of it, and then have plenty of time for questions if anybody has any. I got a little bit of show and tell. We can kind of pass some of this stuff around. We'll do all the logging. We'll all set up the equipment together and do it. So if you're interested in activating for the first time or just getting another activation in, show up on Thursday. So a little bit about me. My name's Tim Annable, WW8L. I've been a ham for 33 years, but wasn't really active on HF for most of it. I always set up a station and it sat there and I didn't do much. Once Parks on the Air came about, kind of heard about it a little bit, was doing some camping where I kind of activated a couple of places I was camping. And then in 2021, I just started activating and I got just prolific at it. And now I spend pretty much all of my ham time doing POTA. And in the last 18 or so months, I've got about 13,000 activator contacts. Right now I'm averaging between 1,000 and 1,100 a month. And a lot of this is just at my home park where I stop there and do a quick activation before work, after work. I do long roves where I'll, go and bag 6 or 8 or 10 parks in one day. And I also do like where we are here. We're not in a park now, but if we were, I have my RV and I set up all kinds of antennas, and sometimes we'll get several hundred contacts just in a weekend camping in a park. So that's kind of just a little bit about me. As far as Parks on the Air, it came about in 2017, really. 2016 was the National Parks on the Air event the ARRL sponsored, and then a group of guys decided to make a website afterwards to keep it going. It's not affiliated with ARRL, but ARRL obviously I think is glad it continued. So it's just a group of volunteers that are mostly software developers that made the POTA website. And I think POTA became really successful because the website's so easy to use. If you look at some of these other ham-based activities where you kind of got to go out like flora and fauna and SOTA, it's not as easy to find where the activators are. It's not as easy to spot yourself. With Parks on the Air, if you have cell coverage, or even if you don't, there's a few tricks to get yourself spotted. But if you can get yourself spotted, a pileup develops and then you can get plenty of contacts. It's also really accessible. So almost everyone lives within, half an hour of one of the POTA parks, and there's some exceptions, and most parks have some way where no matter what your physical abilities are, you can do an activation. So most of the parking lots in the parks are part of the park, and you can activate from your vehicle. So if you can drive there and you have a mobile setup, you can activate. You don't have to be physically fit enough to go climb a mountain like you do on SOTA. If you can operate a station that's mobile or portable, you can activate pretty easily. So I think all of those factors is what has made it so popular. And I know nowadays they have, I don't know the numbers, but it's big numbers that they post, like in the millions of contacts a year that all the activators are getting. So its popularity is just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So a little bit about kind of each of the ways that you can participate. The first one is hunting, of course, and a few people raise their hands and maybe you'd answered a CQ or two. Anytime you are just on the bands and you hear a station calling CQ POTA and you answer them, you've participated in the program. Your contact's going to get logged by the activator. Only the activators do the logging. So as a hunter, you don't have to have an account. You don't have to do anything. The activator is going to upload the log and it's all going to be in there. Even if you don't have an account on the website, 5 years later you decide to make an account, those contacts that you got are going to be in there waiting for you. Activating, you do have to have an account because the activators do upload the logs. To hunt a little more actively, if you're not just going to be passive about it, you're going to want to get familiarized with the website. If you go to POTA.app, POTA.app, I think it opens by default to the spotting page, and you'll see all of the parks that are currently active. And then there's filters on the website, so if you are a CW guy and you want to just look at the CW parks, or if you are limited to a certain band, like if all you have is a 20-meter ham stick, you can filter and say, I just want to see sideband on 20 meters, and it'll show you all of them. You can tune over to your, tune the VFO to wherever the activators are, activate them, go to the next one. So there's a lot of guys that are prolific hunters. I have one gentleman, I can't remember his call off the top of my head, but he probably works me at 90% of my activations, and probably half of my activations, he's the first person that calls me. Because he must just sit at his computer all day and just watch it pop up, and as soon as I call CQ, he's there. And I think he also rolls around a little bit too, because sometimes he spots me. So with hunting, you just find as many as you can and work as many as you can, and it's nice and easy because you don't have to log anything. You just make the contact and everything's in there. If you want to see your stats, you can make an account and you can go see what your stats are, see if you've earned any awards. There's tons of awards. Like you can get, worked all states. I think there's like once you get 25 parks, it's award, and 50 parks, another award. So you can log in and kind of see all of your awards. As far as activating goes, this is what some people find intimidating. They think, oh, geez, going out and being an activator and running a pile up, that's too much. And I got to tell you, it's not. Once you've done it a few times, it can be kind of intimidating. You get that mic shyness or the key shyness. That passes pretty quickly. And it is awesome to be the receiving end of a pileup, which is what happens 90% of the time, unless you've got, really poor propagation or are working on really limited station. You'll generally get a pileup no matter what mode you're on. If you're on CW within 2 or 3 contacts, all of a sudden you start hearing that cacophony, you start using your RIT to tune around. If you're on voice, you pretty much start hearing 15 or 20 or 30 stations calling you all at once within a few minutes. And even if you're on digital, if you're on FT8, you'll see your whole screen turn red because you've got 10 or 15 people answering your CQ call. So it gets exciting to watch all the pileups develop. As far as the different kinds of activating, there's something for everybody, and I've gotten to where I kind of do it all, and that's why I've brought a few things that we'll kind of pass around, and you can feel free to come up and check and look at them. So I'll kind of cover the whole spectrum of activating. The first is basically what we're doing here. So I've got that Cedar Creek camper over there with the pole sticking up around it, and I camp like that in places that are active parks that are similar to this. So my most active one is Pawnee National Grasslands in Colorado, and it's just a national grasslands where you can camp for 14 days just like you can here, but it happens to be a POTA park. So sometimes I'll go out there and I'll bring the camper and I'll set up and I'll operate for 2 or 3 days and get 500 or 600 contacts. It depends on how much time I spend activating and how much time I spend horsing around with other stuff. So like I say, and you can even do it in some campgrounds. So most federal campgrounds are part of a national forest, national park, that kind of stuff. So if you can bring your RV and set up a station, even if it's just a ham stick on the top of your roof, you can do it. I've even operated with the vehicle antennas and radios in the vehicle when I'm in a campground as well. So that's kind of the first kind of heaviest version of activating, is just use your camper, get it to a park, and activate, and you can have a relaxing time doing it. I'll activate for 2 or 3 hours on CW and voice, which is pretty heavy because you're managing pileups and stuff. And if I start getting tired but I still want to make contacts, then I'll get my laptop out and sit down and put the recliner up and I'll work FT8 for 2 or 3 hours as well. So it doesn't all have to be running a pileup with the stress of it. Kind of the next lowest version of impact is mobile operating and roving. I've got my truck here with a HF station, and I'm happy to show anybody. It's not super impressive or anything. It's just an 891 and an ATAS. But if you can get your vehicle into a park, this is probably half of my activations, if not a little bit more. You just drive into the parking lot, turn on the radio, get the antenna tuned up, and make some contacts. I've got both of my vehicles. I've got this truck is just when I'm towing the camp around, and I also have a Jeep, and they're both set up similar. I've got a little CW key that's built into the console. I've got obviously a mic, and then I use a Raspberry Pi that's hooked into the 891, and I control it with a tablet. So I like to, there's not an award for this, but I like to call it a triple play, where I'll get 10 contacts of each kind when I do a park. So I'll get 10 CW contacts, 10 sideband contacts, and 10 FT8 contacts, and move on to the next park. Along with the mobile operating is roving. So roving, there's some separate awards for that, and what roving is operating multiple parks in one day. And when I say day, everything in Parks on the Air is a UTC day. So right now UTC flips over at 5 o'clock. So all the activations that happen until 5 are on today's date, and everything from 5:01 after will be tomorrow's date. But the number of parks that you activate in a given UTC day count towards some of the roving awards. And so they've got the lowest one is 5 park. I think it's called the Warthog Rover. I'm not sure what the name is, but they've got awards for 5 parks, 10 parks, 15 parks, etc. My most successful rove I've done was 17 parks in 5 states in one day. Managed to hit just I live in Colorado, so to get 5 states, I was in the far south east corner, so I got Colorado, Oklahoma, New Mexico, Texas, and Kansas all in one day. Long day to do a rove like that. Some guys have done the max the website supports for awards is 30. I've talked to the developers, and I said, why'd you put that limit on there? And they said, well, we don't want to be responsible for anybody that drives for 24 hours straight and gets in an accident. So they put the cap on at 30. It's one of my goals to get 30 at some point, but where I live, the park density is too low, where it'd be really difficult. It'd be too many hours driving to do it. But there's some areas where there's 30 parks inside of a 50-mile radius. When I've done my 17 park rove, I think I put on 300 and some miles to make that happen. But there are areas in the country where you can get 30 parks in one day and maybe drive 50 or 60 miles. I think the closest one to me is the Moab area. There's a whole bunch of parks over there. Utah's got like 600 parks or something like that. So that's roving. The next level down would be your kind of tabletop operating, and I've got a little bit more stuff here to kind of show. One of the big questions people struggle with is how hard is it to go somewhere and set up an antenna? And we're going to do that on Thursday so everybody can kind of see how quick and easy it can be to set up an antenna. And I've got a few different things here we'll show. One of them is anything that's got a 3/8 mount. So this is the, what brand is this, Dave? Alpha Antennas. This is a 17 or 18 foot whip. I've got the MFJ. This belongs to W8XAL there. And pretty small and compact, 17 feet, so you can be resonant on 20 meters and down, depending on how much you extend it without a tuner. You can do 40 and on up with a tuner. And then you'd need to have some kind of a tripod for it. This, one of our friends in Colorado, W0AEZ, makes this polypuck, and I'll pass it around. And what it is, let's see if I can use some feedback here. It's just a 3/8 mount that you plug in. I don't want to pass these aluminum rods around. So you put these 3 aluminum rods in there, and you put your radiating element in there, and throw out a couple of ground radials, and you're on the air. You can deploy that kind of antenna, I don't know, 5 minutes or less, maybe 10 minutes at the most. You spend a little bit more time putting it away, rolling up radials than anything else. Another one I have, this is a spike mount, and I'll use this with 3/8 as well. And I'll also pass around one of these antennas. This is a 110-inch whip and a little spike mount. And so it'd be kind of hard to use in the ground like this if you didn't have a hammer, but most of the parks you go to, they've got a little grassy area. I can just throw that spike in the grass, smush it down, and put the radios out, and I'm on the air with a vertical pretty quickly. So most of those are super easy to set up and pretty easy to get put away as well. And everything that I'm passing around, with the exception of the stuff that I've got just got around Christmas here, has over 1,000 contacts on it. So there's not a one single way to do it. Anything that you can do, if you can get on the air, you can do parks on the air. Another one is kind of a big bag. I think you guys have probably seen this, the super antenna. So this one's a little bit kind of a heavier deal. I don't want to pass that around because there's too many parts will fall out easy. That's got a little tripod in it, and it's got a manual screwdriver and a whip that goes up, I think 7 feet or so, something like that. So I set those up with 100-watt rigs sometimes, and I'll bring a battery. I also set them up with a 705 or a 6100. 5 watts in parks in the air is plenty if you're the activator. If you're the hunter, it can be hard. As an activator, everybody is listening for you and wanting to work you. So QRP is pretty easy. So if you're wanting to get into QRP or have tried QRP but struggled to make contacts, do it in a park. As soon as you're spotted, everybody's going to be searching for you. It's kind of like, 10 meters isn't open until the contest starts, right? Same with parks on the air. You can sit there QRP, not in a park, and call CQ all day and you make 2 or 3 contacts. If you're in a park and you get spotted, man, unless the band's closed, you're going to make 10 contacts in 15 minutes, almost guaranteed. I also use some of these verticals. This is one I don't have 1,000 contacts on. I got this for Christmas, thanks to my wife. This is the Chameleon MCOM 2. It's a 73-foot, I'll pass it around, 73-foot end wave. I'm just learning how to use an arborist throw line. Dave's teaching me. Him and I do parks on the air a lot together. He's an arborist. So you get that thing up in the trees, and then you've got a nice high horizontal antenna. What I'm experiencing as far as the quality of my antenna is how deep the pileup goes. So I could tell you which antennas create a deeper pileup and which antennas are like, I got, I always get my 10 contacts, which is the limit. But if I've got a little bit more of a compromise antenna, I'm just using that 110-inch green thing that's going around. I may get, if I'm on voice, I may have 8 stations calling me at the same time. If I've got a big antenna like the one set up on my camper or the bigger end-fed half wave that's up in the air, I might have 30 stations calling me at the same time. So it all works. It's just some works a little bit better than others. Another one I use that I just built as well, this is I'm not going to pass that around because it's falling apart. This is a 9-to-1 Balun, and I've got just, I think that's a 25-foot radiating element and then 7 or 8-foot counterpoise on it. And this one is super easy to throw up in the tree because it's not 73 feet long. As long as I get the radiating element up off the ground, even if the counterpoise is laying on the ground, that works just fine. And I use these ferrite beads just with, can you really see that kind of lump in there? That's what I use for a choke. So instead of trying to have a bigger choke than that, I just take 2 or 3 runs of coax and loop them through one of those chokes, and that seems to get it down. And so if you're running QRP, the amount of feedback you get is a little less relevant. And then, so that's kind of tabletop activating. And I've got my favorite park is Boyd Lake State Park. It's 10 minutes from my house. And I, all summer long, would just stop there on the way to work, and I'd throw that 110-inch whip in the ground, get 10 CW contacts while I had my coffee, put it all away, and then go into the office. So I've activated that park. I think I've got it 102 times, and most of that was in the last year. So basically, every third day, roughly, I was over at Boyd Lake State Park. The last kind is more of your, and here's one other screwdriver I'll pass around. This is a manual screwdriver. This one's made by, I don't know who makes it, but it's sold by 4 or 5 companies. You can buy that from Gable Antenna, MFJ, and a couple others. They're all, some Chinese company makes it and markets it. That'll do, it's got a coil for 80, but I don't know why. It doesn't work. But it does work decent enough for 40 through 6. I found 40 meters is kind of the band where your compromises start adding up, and it's a little harder to make contacts. So I usually do most of my stuff, if I'm doing tabletop or QRP, I'll usually stay 30 meters on down. You can do 40, but that's where you don't get as big of a pile up and you have to try a little harder for those contacts. But that screwdriver is nice because you can use like anything that doesn't have a tuner in it. So like a 705 is a real popular radio. It's not only, but its biggest drawback on a 705 is there's no tuner compared to other rigs like the, the Elecrafts or the 6100s. But if you have a tuned antenna, then you don't have to worry about that tuner. So I'll use that screwdriver if I'm using my 705 a lot of the time. The last kind of activating is your SOTA activating. And I just picked this up, I think I got it first week of December. This is that Elecraft KH1. And so this is an entire HF station. It weighs maybe 1.5 pounds. So if you are wanting to do any kind of, whether it's hiking up a mountain or, hiking trail, whatever, if you want to be a little bit more, a little bit lower impact in the way you activate, this is an awesome radio. It's got a little counterpoise in there, and it's got like a 5 or 6 foot whip. Obviously, it's a compromised antenna, and you're not going to get a lot, but again, it's POTA, so everybody wants to work you, so you get the contacts in. I've only done, I think, 3 or 4 activations of this because I just got it, and it's cold, and I learned pretty quick that trying to use the tiny CW paddles at 28, 29 degrees Fahrenheit, not awesome. So I intend to use this a heck of a lot more this summer when it's warm. First time I went out with this, I hadn't used it at all. I'd powered it up to make sure it wasn't dead in the box, and I thought I'd just sit down and work, and it took me about 25 minutes to get through the menu system and teach myself how to use it, how to get to the keyer and set the speed and all that kind of stuff. And then by the time I started calling CQ, my hands were already frozen, and I couldn't even send my own call sign worth a darn. So that was one of my only, call it failed activations, which is, the Parks on the Air folks don't like you to call it a failed activation, but if you don't get 10 contacts, it's not an activation. But activators are supposed to still send their contacts in so the hunters get credit. So I got 3 contacts the first time I used that, but then I've subsequently pretty well. So that's kind of the SOTA Summits on the Air hiking version of it. But like it's battery, tuner, antenna, everything in this little bag, maybe a pound, pound and a half. So everything from giant camper with a bunch of antennas to this, whatever your style is or operating in a vehicle, everyone can activate. So, and I haven't got it to work very well. It does have a built. He mentioned it's got a built-in logger, and I like when I read it on the marketing that's got a built-in logger. My picture of that was, oh, I hook it up to my computer and download my log and upload it. That's not exactly what it is. But what it does do is everything that you send, it will keep. And so you can go in there, and obviously you're going to be sending the hunter's call sign out when you work them. And so it timestamps, I think frequency stamps, I remember right, and then everything that you've sent. So you can look on there if you don't want to, if you're doing a SOTA and it's cold out or you don't want to try and deal with paper, it does keep track of what's in there. But my experience so far is that's fairly limited usefulness, and I actually still write it down. As far as logging software and all that goes, like I say, if you're a hunter, you don't have to do anything. The activators do it. If you're an activator, I found the app Hammers to be just awesome for it. It's a little less awesome than it used to be because they haven't updated it in over a year, and we now have more than 10,000 parks in the U.S., and the software isn't made to handle 5-digit park numbers. So I've activated a couple of the new parks that are near me that are like 10,532 is one of them. I can't put that park number in Hammers. I've got to go edit the log afterwards and manually put it in there. But aside from that, Hammers has worked pretty good. Some folks have had a problem with it where it'll drop their contacts. I haven't experienced that. Other software, and Hammers is on, I think it's on Apple. I'm not sure. I know it's on Android because that's what I use.
It is on Apple.
It is on Apple, thank you. And I also use Hammers sometimes on my laptop. Separate from that, a lot of folks just activate digital, and you can take the log that is in WSJTX. You've got to make sure you clear it before you do your activation so you're not uploading more contacts in your activation. But you can take the log file from WSJTX and upload it directly without any modifications. You just have to tell the website which park number you're in because it doesn't store that in there. I also use Log for Old Men, or Log for the Old Man, whatever that's called. That's my primary. And sometimes when I'm camping, I'll be using my primary log. And all I do on that one, since it's my main log with all my contacts in it, is I just do a quick export of the ADIF for the specific time I was in the park. And that one will allow you to put the park number in there, so it's canned and ready to go. And then lastly, you can log on paper and either put it in your regular log and download, upload it, or right on the website, you can put in your contacts one by one. So the SOTA guys that typically just get their 10 contacts and get off the mountains for it's going to rain, they'll just log on paper, and then you go to the website and you just manually put in the 10 contacts, and that works. So that's kind of the big overview. I wanted to have plenty of time for questions because I know a lot of folks have questions. So fire away. Something's got to be first. Yes. Oh, he said he lives in San Jose, and there's nothing within 60 miles. There's definitely holes where there aren't a lot of parks, and then there's places where there's tons of them. One of the popular activities people like to do is called DC in a day. I think there's 28 parks in Washington, D.C., because like every national monument and all that kind of stuff's a park, and a lot of guys try to work all of them. But yeah, there's definitely some holes where there's not a close one. I have one within 10 miles of me, and I think I activate 5 parks a lot that are near me. One is 10 miles away, and the other's more like 15 or 20, but luck of the draw, I guess, there. Yes, sir. So the question is, how would you add parks in your area if you don't have any? The first thing you got to make sure that the parks meet the criteria. So the criteria is the park has to be owned and managed by the federal government or the state government. So they will not activate county parks, municipal parks, that kind of stuff. But if you and some parks don't qualify, and it's kind of hard to tell if you're digging. Like in Colorado, some of the state wildlife areas are managed by the state of Colorado, but they're owned by some other entity that leases it to the state, so it wouldn't qualify. But there's definitely qualifying entities that aren't registered, and to get those added, they had a moratorium for 4 or 5 years, maybe 3 years, when they weren't adding new parks because they wanted their focus to be adding more countries. They've since lifted that about 2 months ago, and they're adding new parks in the U.S. again. So if you go onto the POTA website, you can find a contact list for all the mapping representatives. Each state has a mapping rep. Just get their email address. It's easier if you do your research first and say, hey, I looked up this state wildlife area. It appears that it's owned by the state and it's managed by the state. I think it qualifies. Can we get that added? Yes.
What is the standard or required QSO exchange?
The question is, what's the standard QSO exchange? And there isn't a standard. So most of these, I mean, there's guidelines, but pretty much if the activator calls it a QSO, it's a QSO. Some people like to exchange signal report and state. Some people just do signal report. Some people exchange a little bit more, but there isn't a standard. It's not like a contest where you've got to exchange specific things. But as long as you've made 2 bidirectional contact, then it works. And I guess I'll speak just a little bit as far as the rules, as far as what counts as activating in a park. I mentioned already that it's got to be 10 contacts. In addition to that, you have to be 100% in the park. That's your body, your antenna, your coax, your vehicle doesn't have to be there, but every part of your activation has to be physically in the park. So some people have wondered, well, can I remote into my home station while I'm at a park? And the answer is no. Everything's got to be in the park. Another question? Yes, sir. Question is, what do you do about RFI from neighbors, basically, if you're in a campground? And I don't have a great answer other than, that just comes down to dealing with it the best you can. What I will say, though, is since a pileup develops, often you'll get enough strong stations to work. So in a circumstance where you've got, S4 noise from the guy 2 campers down from you, that's going to make it so it's going to be pretty hard to work anybody that's not coming in S4 or higher, right? But since you're spotted and everybody wants to work you, you're probably not going to have a problem getting a dozen stations that come in that are S5 or higher, so you can still work, you can still activate, but I don't have a great answer for that other than go away from the people. So, and that's at some of the parks that I activate, I know where the noisier areas are. So at Boyd Lake State Park, my home park, it's a big lake, but it's still right in the middle of a town, and I know which side of which parking lot has more noise and which parking lot has less noise on which band. So if I know I go at night, I can't go to the park that's on the far north side of that park because there's a house that's a half a mile from there that puts out a lot of noise on 40. But that's the best beach to be at on 20. So, yes, sir. Okay, well, the question was urban activations. What are the challenges and what kind of equipment do you use? Most of the urban type stuff I activate from within my vehicle. So at almost all the parks, the parking lot is part of the park. It is the responsibility of the activator to know that they're in the park. So the Parks on the Air website is just kind of a convenience feature to help you know about where parks are. But the website does not include, here's where the park boundaries are specifically. So there's a few parks where the parking lot isn't part of the park. One example of that is Alcatraz Island National Park. That one, the parking lot is, not on the island, right? So I typically will activate from my vehicle on those. I have, since I got the KH1, thought, and I haven't done this yet, is the KH1 would be a good thing to just, if it's a park, like if I went to Washington, D.C. and wanted to activate on the steps of the memorial, I would just do it there. The other challenge that you run into in the more urban environments is questions. So from the people that might run the park or might have a problem with what you're doing there. I know the right answer is probably that we should all be an ambassador to ham radio and be putting up banners and really getting everybody to rah, what is this? Honestly, that's not my style. I kind of go as stealthy as I can. So if I'm sitting in a vehicle that has an antenna on it, I'm just a guy sitting in a vehicle that has an antenna on it. They don't necessarily notice that I'm doing an activation. But if I tried to go set up, a 17-foot tall antenna in the front yard of a historic mansion or something, that'd probably draw a few questions. I do know that some guys are better ambassadors than I am, and they will call the park office like a week in advance and say, hey, look, here's what parks on the areas, here's what I'd like to do, and near as I can tell, kind of the response on that's 50-50. It's usually never that the person they talk to wants to say no. It's that the person they talk to doesn't know how to say yes because, you know, they don't want, stuff rolls uphill, right? And so they don't want to say yes. But for me, I just say as stealthy as I can. Next question? Yes, sir.
Is there a POTA app that you recommend?
A POTA app? You mean besides POTA.app?
Well, that's a website, right?
It's, yeah. It is a website, but it's a website that runs like an app. It's highly mobile optimized. But short answer is no. I don't use any other software besides logging software and the POTA.app website. One thing I will recommend, though, is that you be aware of where you do and don't have cell coverage. Because if you don't know where the park is or what the park number is before you leave cell coverage, I did this last year. I got out of POFA, and I had forgotten what the park number was, so I just started calling CQ POTA, and the first person that answered, I said, that's a little embarrassing, but can you tell me what my park number is? And I had him look it up. It is very common to ask people to spot you, so if you don't have cell service, it can be hard to spot. They were working on implementing an SMS thing where sometimes you can text, but you don't have data. They were working on a project where you do that, which I tested for them a little bit, but it's not been released, and I don't know if it's still an active project. So getting spotted can be a little bit of a challenge. Anything on reverse beacon network? Thanks, Jim. If you're doing CW, if you schedule your activation in advance, there's a place on the website where you can schedule it. There's a bug in it, so it's not working right now, but I know they're working on fixing it. If you schedule your activation and then start activating and reverse with beacon network picks you up, it'll put you on the spotting page as soon as that's fixed, which I don't have a timeline for that. Next question. Yes, sir. Comment was POTA is international right now, which it is. It's becoming more and more international. I don't know the quantity of countries, but I know it's pretty much all of the developed countries and more coming along. It is, and you can activate anywhere in the world that you've done the legal work to be able to operate. So it is the activator's responsibility, if you're going to be working internationally, to make sure you've done whatever you need to do in the destination country, to whether you have to get a separate call sign or register or whatever. I've never done any of that. I know there's hoops to jump through. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I was just going to comment, that's what I'm doing here. I'm from Canada, and it's getting more popular in Canada as well, but one of the problems we have is that you've got long distances between cell coverage and spotting. So as you mentioned, I nicely ask people sometimes if they've contacted me, if they're hunting, if they're on the spot page, if they would spot me. And what I try and do too is, if I first started becoming a activator, and I really feel the courtesy is, if you're an activator, you should spend I feel I should spend time hunting to reciprocate for those guys that are also activated. It helps them out, and you get credit for hunting too. So.
Everybody catch just that was too much for me to summarize.
Sorry.
Oh, no problem. I should have brought the mic over to you. Yes, sir. So the comment, I most of that. The comment's basically a technique to get yourself spotted, and that is, if you don't have cell service and you can't spot yourself, is instead of just calling CQ, what he suggested is you just go find another park that's activating, work park to park, and then ask them if they wouldn't mind spotting you, which that's a great idea. I've never thought of that. Speak just a little bit about parks. So that's one of the kinds of awards you can get, is how many park to park contacts you get. and actually another kind of activating. Some guys do what they call stealth activating or something like that, where they just go to a park and work park to park only and never call CQ. Sounds fun. That's not my style, but park to park is any two parks that work each other. And generally speaking, it's not a formal rule or anything, but it's kind of a gentleman's agreement that park to park contacts get a little priority. So if you're hearing a pileup, you hear somebody just yell park to park, that means, hey, I get to cut the line and go first. And then the activators say go park to park, and they'll exchange the parks. As far as logging park to parks, that is automatic, and you don't actually need to log the park number, with one exception. If it's two people and they're both working from individual parks, the system will automatically figure out that's a park to park as long as they're within 15 minutes UTC of each other. It'll say, oh, this guy, I worked this guy, he said he worked him, they were within 15 minutes, that's kind of their error window, then it'll log it as park to park. What it won't do is two-fers, which I haven't mentioned, so let's talk about a 2-fer, 3-fer, 4-fer. Some of these entities are multiple parks. So an example of that would be Fort Laramie State Park, or Fort Laramie National Historic, whatever it is. So it's an old fort, and it in and of itself is a park. But then in addition to that, the Santa Fe Trail goes through it, the Mormon Trail goes through it, and a couple other trails go through it. National Historic Trails are all parks. They're not parks with boundaries because they go hundreds of miles long. The rule on the National Historic Trails is you just have to be within 100 feet of the trail. So when you go activate Fort Laramie, if you get in the right spot in the parking lot, you're in 5 parks. You're in 4 trails and the park itself. And you log those as separate contacts. So a unique contact is a unique park you're coming from, a unique park you're unique park you're coming from or talking to, unique frequency, unique time, and unique UTC day. So when you are at a 5-fer park, 1 QSO is 5 QSOs because you log it 5 times. So you still have to get 10 in each park for it to count as an activation in each park, but each QSO counts that X number of times. Next question? Yes, sir.
Even though you and I know it, talk about operating each band differently. 10 meters is a contact, 20 meters contact, 40, etc.
So the bands themselves are also, you mentioned that one of the unique factors. So you can work the same station on multiple bands, and each one of those counts as unique contact. Same with modes and submodes. So you can work the same station on FT4 and FT8, and those are unique contacts. You can work the same station on 10-meter sideband and 12-meter sideband. That's unique contact. Another one of the awards that they chase after is the N1CC, who I think it's a memorial award. I don't know anything about the gentleman, but it's getting at least 10 contacts on 10 different bands at 10 different parks. That's hard, unless you're roving with friends and you all just work each other. But because there's most of your contacts are going to be HF. So there's not 10 HF bands that you can easily work. I've done a little bit of 160 work, but that's hard. It's only with my camper. So getting that in 1CC is probably one of the most challenging awards to get. Yep. I got it, and I checked with the one of the official Parks on the Air folks, and the question that we were talking about was, well, what happens if me and a few friends just go and work each other in a bunch of parks together? And they said, no problem. It's not a contest. You're not, that's forbidden in like the VHF, UHF contest. A group can't go rove together and count working each other. But their philosophy in a park was, look, the goal of Parks on the Air is to get people to go out into the park and play radio. That's what you're doing. So if it's a group of 5 people working each other, you're going to a park and playing radio. So that fits within. Yeah, he mentioned you make contacts on a dummy load, and in fact, that's basically what Dave and I did. We did, and another friend of ours did I think it was a 14 park rove, if I remember right. Although one of them was Fort Laramie, so it was 5 parks in one stop. And we all worked each other from 160 through 70, including 220. And on a lot of them, we just turned our power down to 1 watt. As low as they go on the rig, and didn't tune the antenna or nothing. And it conceptually feels a little bit like cheating, but when you talk to the Parks and Air people, it's like, yeah, you're in the park playing radio. That's the goal of the program. So Yep. Yep. The question is there any disadvantage to working the same person multiple times, the same park multiple times? And the answer is really no, unless your goal is to only get unique stuff. So some people, their goal is to chase the awards that are the number of parks they've worked. And obviously, if you're working the same guy in the same park all the time, you're not making any progress towards that. But as long as it's a unique contact like we talked about, it's going to count. And there's even awards for that. One of the awards is called Operator to Operator. And I've worked the same, it's a hunter award, so there's awards for hunters and activators. And even if you're a hunter that never logs anything or makes an account, you might have awards waiting for you if you ever do make an account. But the Operator to Operator award is I work the same guy 20 plus times. And you can earn it at 20, and then you earn it at 40 and 60 and so on. Yep. Comment was basically that working the same station multiple times, multiple bands, that still boosts your stats. So it counts towards, working the same park multiple times is an award. And so is activating the same park multiple times. My biggest one, my home park, I just got I can't remember the name of the award, but it's 100 successful activations of that park, which is 100 trips to a park to get 10 plus contacts is a lot. Any other questions?
You brought up an interesting point. So if you're working and you get the same hunter, like on 3 different bands, is that 3 contacts?
Yep, that is 3. So the question is, if you work the same hunter, well, if the same hunter and activator work each other on 3 bands, that 3 contacts, and it is.
Part of the 10 contacts you need.
Yes, it does count towards the 10 you need. So a unique contact is UTC, or the elements, only one has to be different for it to be a unique contact. The UTC day, the band, the mode, or the park number. So if I'm in a threefer where I'm working 3 parks and you're hunting me, you get 3 contacts for working me once. And then if we switch to another band, you got 6 contacts. Now, as an activator, I got 3 contacts as well, but for each park that I'm in to be successful, I've got to have 10. So while I would have gotten 3 contacts on each one, I still really need to get 10 on each park. 10 total real contacts for it to count as a successful activation on each entity.
You might mention that each day is an activation.
Yep.
If you go past 2400 UTC into the next entity.
Yep, correct. And I did that yesterday out at COFA. So the comment was each day is one of those unique factors. So as soon as a new UTC day rolls around, you can work the same group of people again. And it's convenient for us here that in the evening is when UTC rolls around. It's not the middle of the night for us. So yesterday we were out at COFA at 4 o'clock in the afternoon activating. I was in the middle of running a voice pile up at 4:55 p.m. and UTC starts at 5:01, 5 o'clock. As soon as the UTC day rolled around, I just announced, okay, it's a new UTC day. Everybody get back in line and work me again. And I just worked the same group of people again, and it was a new activation, and they all counted. He asked if you got the early award, and I don't remember exact. So there's a early shift and a late shift award, and I don't remember the quantity you got to get. It's like you get 20 contacts after some date, sometime UTC, and it used to just be UTC based. This was kind of a funny the way they had approached it, and Parks on the Air was obviously a U.S. program at first that has gone international, and so for the first several years, the late shift was defined as from 0 UTC until, I don't know, whatever 3 o'clock in the morning UTC is Mountain, something like that, and then the early shift was from then until 8 o'clock in the morning or something like that. Well, that doesn't work too well on a worldwide program. So all of a sudden, the question comes up, is like, all these people are getting late shift awards for, just being in Europe in the middle of the afternoon. It doesn't work. So what they did is they changed it, and time zones, if you've ever looked at the actual time zone map worldwide, it is rather jagged. Like the time zones kind of zip around all over the place, and parks are very often, because there's so many parks, and some of the parks are huge, like COFA, it goes almost from here to Yuma. a lot of parks are in multiple time zones. So what they do is they say, hey, the geographic center of the park, where it kind of lies relative to Greenwich, that's its offset for that park. There was a little bit of a struggle with people saying it's too confusing, I don't want to go do this math and that math, so I just added onto the park's profile on the website what late shift is for that particular park in UTC. But late shift is basically just working late into the evening or early in the morning is early shift. Yes? The question was, how accurate does your UTC time need to be relative to the hunter? And you should have relatively accurate time, but it isn't relevant to the hunter because the hunter doesn't submit a log. So the only log submitted is the activator. I would still say it'd be good amateur practice to, be relatively close. Where it does come into play is if you are park to park, and those two parks are more than 15 minutes apart UTC, the system won't count that as a park to park. Comment was SOTA to make sure and check their website, and there's a lot of SOTA sites, I guess you call them, or peaks. I've never been a SOTA. The other thing I would mention about SOTA, though, is a lot of SOTA peaks that people go climb are in national forests, and all national forests are parks. So if you're doing SOTA, I'm from Colorado, so climbing 14ers is a real popular activity if you don't look like me. But guys that go do the SOTA, they'll often log it as a parks on the air too. The caveat to that is parks on the air is 10 and SOTA is 3. But then on the flip side, you can only do a SOTA. You can only activate a SOTA peak once a year, and you can activate a POTA site once a day. SOTA's 4. Thank you. Thank you. Yep.
So it does not have to be HF.
No, it does. The question is, does it have to be HF? And it does not. It just has to be a contact on ham radio that doesn't involve a repeater unless it's a satellite that you're licensed to use. So I have had a few activations where I just wanted to, get a few more 70 centimeter contacts. So I just went on the local repeater and announced, hey, I'm doing a Parks on the Air activation at this park. If anybody would like to try and work me on 440, I'll be on 446000. And then I start calling CQ over there, and sometimes you get 10, sometimes you don't, just kind of depends. The most I ever got on 2 meters was I was working at a park that was a little bit above Fort Collins, Laurie State Park, and I was in a spot that had a good line of sight to Fort Collins. And I was just getting ready to get set up, and I checked into the club net, 40-some people check into, and the net op's like, well, do you want us all to just work you real quick before we start the net? And I said, sure. So we flipped over to 5.2. And then we did I worked everybody I could hear. I couldn't hear everybody, of course, but worked everybody, a bunch of people on 5.2, and then flipped over to 4.46 and worked them all. But so yeah, any valid contact that's within your license privilege you can use. But I would say probably 90+%, 95% are done on HF, just because that's you can get out more. And we also, another trick to get a lot of POTA contacts is to do field day in a POTA park. So we do POTA or field day in the Pawnee National Grasslands in Colorado, and every single one of those contacts count. Another aspect of that is club calls, and we'll be using a club call when we do our activation on Thursday. So when you do a club activation and you're operating as a club call, the club call sign gets credit and the individual operator gets credit as long as you log it properly. You've got to log the station call sign and the operator call sign separately. So when we go to COFA on Thursday, we'll be operating as W4 POA, which is Whiskey 4 Parks on Air. That's a club I started. But we'll log every operator. So everybody will sit down, get 10 contacts, we'll switch operators. So we'll all be operating as W4 POA, but every person that gets any contacts, those will all be uploaded, and everyone will get individual credit for it as well. Even if you don't have a POTA account, once those are in the database, they're in there. So if you go out with us on Thursday and get 10 contacts, and then forget about it, and then 3 years later decide you want to get into POTA, when you make your account, you'll already have an activation done. The question is, do the activators upload the logbook of the world? And it's mixed, and it's just logbook of the world is one of those things where some people are like, oh, that's too complicated, I'm never going to get that certificate to work, and so they don't have to. I think probably half, 2/3 of them do. I do. So, all right, thanks everybody, I appreciate it. Feel free to come on up if you have any more questions, and see some on Thursday.